Morning. Um, so, thanks to Gary, Craig and Alex giving the overview to the RIBA shift towards outcomes. I'm interested to know how many architects are here? Just show of hands. About 15 or so. How many constructors? One. How many engineers? About 4 or 5, yeah. How many of you have done post-occupancy evaluation of a completed project? That's quite good, actually. So that's about a third of all the people that put hands up, maybe even a half. That's the best result I've seen. The outcome of a project is obviously measured in the success of the use of the building. We could say meeting the client brief might be the success of the building, if we know what the brief is and if we've put appropriate targets in that. What do you think the brief for this space was? Platform, 4 speakers, seating, and we'll measure the outcome. So why do post-occupancy evaluation? So you can assess the success of the building. Environmental factors, social factors, economic factors. In social, I'm including human factors. You can verify sustainability and specified objectives for the building, how it was meant to operate, how it was meant to look, the materials. You can also benchmark the performance of the building. So if you monitor the building after handover, you can compare it with other buildings. Is it as well liked? Is it as efficient as other buildings? And not least, it provides feedback to the designers and feedback to the constructors that you're doing the right thing. So at the moment, the industry has a lot of performance gaps. There's a lot of evidence in government-funded research and academic research. So these are publications from Innovate UK, Zero Carbon Hub, when it existed, was focusing on performance gap in the residential sector. But we find similar gaps in all sorts of buildings where outcomes aren't the objectives that were expected. Carbon Buzz is an example of an industry collaboration on disclosure. It's fairly simple. It's open source. It just relies on people declaring design data on the expected energy use, and then declaring actual data on the real metered energy use. And as has been referenced before, you often find that the outcome is worse than expected. So we know the construction industry is, I suppose, disparate. It has a lot of different stakeholders and players, but what the RIBA sustainability overlay is trying to do is get project teams to focus on these outcomes. Another example of how we can look at different outcomes is if we compare a display energy certificate with an energy performance certificate. They measure very different things. So what that's what an energy performance certificate looks like. You've probably seen it on the fridge and dishwasher, and buildings will have these when they're sold and there's a new tenancy. That's the energy performance certificate. Public buildings have to have a display energy certificate of the actual energy consumption. So a school, library, town hall. But the private sector doesn't. This building won't have a display energy certificate. But somebody would have done an assessment of the design and the assumed construction. So This study, which was published by the Better Buildings Partnership, shows the ratings of what you've got stacked down here are the different energy performance certificates. So you've got an A-rated energy performance certificate. So that means at construction, it's been calculated to have the best energy performance. And then B, C, D, E, when you go down to orange. F and G, you're not allowed to let an F or G rated building anymore over above a certain size. But what these lines here show is the actual energy consumption. So not what the construction rating is, but the actual. So you can see a C-rated building. All these lines are buildings from the Better Buildings Partnership. So a big database of commercial buildings. And these bars show the measured energy consumption. There's almost no correlation between a C-rated building or an E-rated building. In fact, there are many E-rated buildings that perform better than C-rated buildings. Now, that's quite a simplistic comparison because there are certain ways of defining these ratings, but it nevertheless shows the disparity of how buildings are really operated. So what the new RIBA sustainability overlay will do is try and reduce this gap. And if the client asks for a sustainable building, an energy efficient building, then that's what they should have, and we should validate that. So there are other examples of performance outcomes and ways of setting criteria. Obviously, BREEAM, Passive House. There's the well building standard, which is getting some traction. Design quality indicator. So designers and project managers, clients could talk about different objectives. So the architect specifies insulation in a school. What could possibly go wrong? This is an outrageous example of where there were performance gaps in construction. So the Edinburgh schools collapse in 2017 meant that several schools had to be closed, and hundreds of children were deprived of education while new, safer buildings were found for them. What the independent review identified is there was inadequate site supervision, there were insufficient skills on site. So it wasn't enough to specify thermal insulation. You have to look at the whole process. The design construction is a journey. The outcome is the measure of success. And obviously, some of you will be familiar with other collapses and failures where things didn't quite happen as intended. So we have to work together as teams to look at the integrated approach on quality of outcomes. One way you can look at the approach from the guidance is aligning it with what industry calls soft landings. So some clients are asking for a soft landings approach, which is about setting objectives and then validating outcomes. So there's great alignment in the industry. We're seeing other institutions, other organizations, clients aligned with the RIB desired outcome of a focus on validating a building in use. So it will need more stakeholder engagement. It will need lessons learned workshops. What can we learn from success and failure? Design and construction reviews. So we really need to test the design, test the construction methodology, and be open about what that means to cost and outcomes. The handover and training really needs a lot more concentration than it currently has. What often happens is commissioning and handover is compressed. so that the training of the building manager, the training of the occupants is shortened, sometimes cutting corners on testing and commissioning of complex systems like building management and control systems. And then the aftercare. It's not mandatory in consultant appointments. It's not mandatory in the constructor's appointments. But if the industry is looking to measure success in the quality of outcomes, then discussions with clients about that aftercare and evaluation process should improve the quality of delivery. And then with this post-occupancy evaluation, which is mentioned in the sustainability overlay, it could be 1 year, it could be 3 years. Often the first year you're discovering some issues about how things were controlled and operated. So actually the best evaluation could be first, second, third year. Can be light touch, it doesn't need to be resource intensive, but then go back and look to see if what we've measured is aligning with the objectives and the intended outcomes. And this feedback loop is brilliant for designers. I learned so much about success and failure by going back to buildings. People weren't quite sure how the controls work. There's too much glare, overheating. What can we do next time about the shading and the design of the facade? Some comfort could be improved. What can we think about next time with the ventilation? So this feedback loop is really useful for the designers to improve their practical skills in delivering successful outcomes. So there is a lot of work going on in measuring outcomes. Here's an example of someone from the Welsh School of Architecture in Cardiff who's helping to monitor schools. And what they're doing is collecting data from different rooms in a school. They're looking at electricity, gas, water, and they're showing how the energy and water is used at weekends, during the day at different times. So this gives the construction team a picture of why are we using so much energy or water at the weekend? Was it just that controls were left on? There may be a justification in that there was a need to occupy the building at the weekend, but you do sometimes find that there's just free running of systems and it's using energy. So that's one example of how energy can be displayed to give feedback to the project team and client. And the same work at the Welsh School of Architecture is looking at comfort as well. So we mentioned, the human outcomes, the well-being. This is an infographic showing overheating risk in different rooms. So red is showing it's getting too hot. So some criteria are defined such that red is giving clarity that there's risk of overheating. And this relates to different rooms. So what you can do from the data gathered from the building management system is learn about the factors creating overheating in some schools. And this is becoming a massive issue where sometimes educational outcomes are affected by the comfort. So this bar here is in an entrance. We can see a lot of overheating in this entrance room. Here are some rooms here. Perhaps they're more south-facing. Perhaps these are north-facing rooms, so they're green. They don't have so much of an overheating risk. But with the data, you can learn the lessons about the operation and design to hopefully make improvements and learn for the next designs. So Ben Derbyshire, RIBA president, very encouraging of the new review of the plan of work and and the trend towards post-occupancy evaluation. So there is RIBA guidance, and it helps project teams look at what that might entail, how to do surveys of client satisfaction, environmental monitoring, that kind of thing. So to summarize then, post-occupancy evaluation and verification, and some of you are doing it, that's great. And I'm sure there'll be different levels of involvement and detail in that, but it's good that some people are doing that, but there was still, you know, representation from the construction sector that aren't, and I know lots of my colleagues are still trying to do more, but it's something we want to improve. So post-occupancy helps review the outcome, really, and assess performance, assess satisfaction. It's really good to hear from the end users what they thought about the building, and we have to be open about that. They might say, I didn't like the access, it's confusing. Let's learn from that. We're separating this from defects liability inspections. We're not checking whether the door handles are the right color or the window hinge is a bit wobbly unless there's a systemic failure there. We are really looking at strategic issues, so we're differentiating it from defects inspections. We're doing a review of performance and success of the functionality. And this, when we can share this feedback, you know, imagine if every future build people are sharing stories of their projects and how we can all improve. That would be a great place to be, and improve the quality of outcomes. So thank you very much.